here. You can't see my face because today I am doing a screen recording video for you guys. I just did an engagement shoot last week and I thought that I would create a little video just to pop up on here super quick. Nothing as developed or fancy as my other videos, I guess. So I just thought I'd do a very quick video just to show you guys exactly how I edit an engagement shoot. I have this engagement shoot from last week, which we did in the woods, and I thought I would show you a little bit about what I do with my preset, how I tweak it, how I change all the different photos. So you can see here I have these 5 different photos here to have a look at. Let's make these a little bit bigger so you can see. These are all straight from camera. And we're going to basically go through and we're going to apply my base preset and then show you how I tweak as we go along. So, like most wedding photographers, I normally start with a base preset. So that is something which kind of gets me most of the way there in terms of how I like my photos to generally look. It's not a perfect 100% one-click type thing, but once you apply the preset, then it makes everything just a little bit easier, kind of keeps your photos consistent, and then you can sort of make your tweaks from there. So let's move over onto the develop module. I'm in Lightroom, obviously, if it wasn't obvious, I'm in Lightroom. So just to show you, I shoot on a Sony a7 III. This photo is taken with a 55mm 1.8 at f2. Okay, so I have a few presets over here, and my starting one here at the moment, what I'm using is DJ5, which is, I guess, the 5th version of my most recent presets. And as you can see, it applies a pretty good colour, straight from the back, kind of consistent with how my style looks, you know, nice skin tones, that kind of thing. But of course it is not 100% there. This is when I can start tweaking. So we'll just go over to the basic tab over here. Hopefully you can all see this okay, because it's my first screen recording, so hopefully this all looks absolutely fine. So just to start off with, we want to make sure that our exposure is where we want it to be. I think we're probably pretty good about there. This is a starting point, and then I want to make sure that my white balance is where I want to be. So this is already looking a little bit warm for me, so I maybe want to move this down to 55-ish, something like that. There we go, is a good starting point there. So in my preset, this is sort of how my highlights, my shadows, and my whites and blacks kind of set up by default. And I will probably tweak these just a little bit, probably just bring the whites down just a bit so they're not blown out there. And then the shadows is kind of what I use to kind of bring detail back into the face as well. So bring a bit more detail into this lovely beard here, and then I can kind of adjust the blacks if need be. But generally I would adjust the blacks instead of adjusting the contrast point, just because I think it's just a bit nicer, just to bring a bit more contrast into the image. So just to there is a good place to start with. Next I want to move on to the crop. So I just want to make sure that this is kind of how I want it. I'm going to kind of chop off a little bit more there without trying to chop off the top of his head if I can help it. Yeah, that seems like pretty good to me. Okay, so that is kind of there. Clarity, I will only ever really use the clarity just if I'm getting like really close to people's skin. You know, like if it's a zoomed in shot. Just because I don't really like the whole, like, you know, removing all the detail type of stuff. I just rather have it nice and natural. So probably about somewhere between -5, -10. Like there is absolutely fine. Okay, so to show you, this is what my tone curve looks like. Once I've applied this, I don't touch it. This is basically standard for all of my presets. And then my colour, again, I don't really touch it unless something stands out. So, you know, this is kind of how I get essentially my look. And then if I want to change things later on, I might do, but unless something is kind of distracting, maybe like there's too much green in the image or too much blue in the image, then I might adjust them in here, but I kind of don't really touch it, to be honest with you. So this is kind of nearly there. Now the final thing I would normally do with an image is apply some sort of like gradient or radial filter, just to kind of like bring the attention into the subject and focus a little bit. And with a couple shot like this, I would normally use a radial filter. So that's just over here. And all I'm going to do is just drag a filter over the couple and then just bring the exposure down a little bit. Not too much, like not so much that you notice. You can actually, if you press O on your keyboard, you can kind of see where that's affecting there, just to make sure that you're not affecting their faces. Yeah, so not so much that you notice, but enough that you can kind of see that there's something there. So I'll just show you, if I press delete, you can see that's gone, and bring it back. So enough to just kind of bring the attention into the face just a little bit there. And you might need to adjust your exposure after you've done that, just to kind of made that stand out a little bit. But yeah, so that is kind of about what I would do for image number 1. I did show you here as well, like, so I don't have any sharpening or grain or anything like that applied at the moment, because I will do that all later on in a piece of software called Exposure X5. But that is what I would do with Lightroom. So image number 1 is done. Now, just to kind of show you what I would normally do if I was editing this for real, I would probably be pretty lazy here, and I'd probably just press previous right at the bat, because generally speaking, if I'm shooting from photo to photo to photo and editing them like in order, normally if I shoot in manual, then if I edit one photo, it's normally good enough for the next picture, and I can just move along that way. But I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm going to edit this one from scratch again, so I will apply my DJ5 preset. Now I can already see that this is super bright, which I don't like, so I'm just going to dial this down just a bit here, just to about there. And then just kind of bring a little bit more back into the sky if I can. I probably overexposed this image a little bit when I shot it and lost the detail a little bit, but let's see what we can do. And then again, just adjusting the backs just to bring that contrast back into the image a little bit. There we go. There we go. That's about where I want it. And now let's make sure our white balance is good. So again, probably to about there. Like for me with white balance, like it's more just like, I do like it on the warm side, but also I want to make sure it's really consistent from photo to photo. So I will be looking like kind of at the scene as a whole when I edit normally with white balance, just to make sure everything kind of matches, and sync my white balance up as I go. Okay, and then, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's make sure our crop is good. So just making sure that they are stood nice and straight, and kind of maybe on a third or something like that. I didn't shoot this very well. It's like with this big tree sticking out on top of their head, but you know, it's what it is. I hope they like it. So okay, and then I will add in probably a radial blur again, a radial filter again for these guys. So let's just drag this over and then pull this down a bit. Again, not so much that you notice, you know, not so much it looks like photoshopped, but enough just to kind of like guide the eye, I guess, towards where you want it to be. Another cool thing you can do with this kind of texture as well is with a radial filter, you can actually like bring the clarity up, just to kind of, if you want to put more clarity into the trees a little bit, then you can do that. And also you can adjust the saturation like outside of them as well, which is quite a nice way to like have your greens going on without too much like on them as well. You can also adjust the hue if you fancy it, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, so yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I think I would probably normally leave it there and move on to the next one. Okay, so just so you know, this one is shot with an 85, and there is, I think there's like my phone here or something, just to kind of like add a little bit of interest and reflect a tree back into it or something like that, just add a bit of a foreground element here. So once again, let us apply our preset. This one actually is pretty close to being done straight out of that. I don't really need to adjust much here at all. I quite like the colours, and you can see like this is why like sometimes you do get it pretty close, which is good. Okay, so just pulling the highlights down. Clarity is good where it is. Blacks don't really need to move. Okay, and then for this one, I'm going to use a gradient filter because I want to pull down all of the exposure on this side of the image on the left-hand side. So I'll just apply this filter here and drag this down a little bit, and then pull this exposure down. And you know, when you do the cool thing about gradient filters is that you can kind of mess around with them a lot more, like in terms of changing the colors or just being a bit funky with it, doing whatever you want to do. I'm just going to kind of maybe drag the clarity down just a bit, so it kind of blurs off, and then yeah, so it kind of finishes on black there. And actually, I think I'll add a radial filter as well, just a smidgen. Okay, there we go. Let's make sure our crop's good. Actually, I think it's fine. And yeah, that's one done for me. Happy with that one too. Don't really need to change anything there. Okay, so this one is a more of a close-up image, so I probably will pull down the clarity a little bit, but I'm just going to bring exposure up here So she's obviously lit better than he is in this shot. Like, she's got better light coming onto her face. So what I will probably do in this is use a whatever brush this is called, like an adjustable brush or whatever you call it, you know, paintbrush. And I'm just going to kind of bring some shadows back onto his face here, make this a bit bigger, and kind of just push this back on just a bit, not too much, just to maybe exposure just a little bit, just so that he kind of matches there, as opposed to looking kind of underexposed. Yeah, which is better there. Cool. And then, because it's a bit of a close picture, maybe I will pull the clarity down slightly, not too much. And then I'm going to crop in probably a little bit closer. Yeah, cool. Probably I would remove, sometimes if I'm feeling like it, I'll probably move some of the stuff on the jacket here. I'm not going to do it this time. And again, I'm going to apply radio filter to the faces and pull the exposure down a bit. Maybe warm up the outside a bit as well. There we go. And exposure up again. Cool. And then last one. And this one will need another bit of adjusting. So let me pull this up just to kind of get the exposure right on her face. It's not a particularly well lit shot. It's very overcast day, but we can make it work. And then let's pull this up again. Again, I probably should remove some of these dots off his jacket. So gradient filter on this side, just to there. And let's pull this down a bit. Maybe make this more green, or more yellow. There we go. Radio filter on these guys. Just pull everything down a bit. And then adjustment brush, that's what it's called, on this guy's face. And let's go with exposure. Okay. I'm not sure if it's bringing attention into the eyes there, because I can see her eyes are lost a little bit there. Okay, there we go. Okay. So, I think that one. Okay, so here's my 5 shots. I would quickly probably check these over. Like, if this is a full session, like I would check over just to make sure like white balance is kind of consistent, to kind of make sure that all the images, basically exposure wise and all that kind of thing, kind of look like one set. This is pretty good. I could probably go get these closer, but yeah, for the purposes of this video, I think it's all good. That's fine. And then what I would normally do is take these 5 images and put them into a piece of software called Exposure, just to kind of add in my final little bit of tweaks. So let me just export these, and then I'll open these back up in Exposure. Okay, so if anyone's not seen this before, this is Exposure X5, and it basically is what I use to kind of finish off my images. It's got a bunch of cool little presets you can kind of add on the top, which kind of just add like a nice bit of style to your shots once you finish editing them. So these are the JPEGs, and I'm going to basically apply one of these film presets or something like that on top, and kind of just bring it down to suit my image. So you can see here, like, you've got like Kodak Gold. Actually, let's use this image as a better example. Fuji Reeler, and a whole bunch of ones. Now, like, they are a bit over the top, but you can kind of adjust the opacity to kind of make it so that it's not, you know, too much. I've actually created my own preset here called Danny. So you can see it's not a huge amount, but if I press before and after, you can see like it kind of is like it's applying all the sharpening. So you can definitely see in his beard like it's a lot sharper. It's applying a bit of grain, and it's also just adding a little bit more of a filmic look towards the end there. But you know, let's not use my one. Let's use what's a good one? Okay, so let's try Kodachrome. Kodachrome 200. So obviously you can see like it's super noisy and grainy and too much. But if you go over to the overall intensity here and bring this down to like, I don't know, 30, something like that, depends on which one you're using, you can kind of get like a nice base here. I'd probably say actually this one is probably a little bit grainy for myself, so I'm going to go with
become 64, and then bring the intensity down to here, and then you can see if you go before and after, it's obviously it's sharpening the image, which is great. Especially X5 does a really good job of sharpening images, and this has a nicer grain to it than what you can get from Lightroom, but it is adding just like a nice bit of punch to it as well, a nice little finisher to it. And yeah, and then it can apply to all its images. The good thing about exposure as well is that you can kind of apply presets to sort of all the images at once, so you can do like a colour version and a black and white version, which is obviously really good for editing weddings. Let me apply this to all of my images at once. Now you should be able to see. So there is before and after. Like, so you won't really notice it, but like it's enough to me to kind of like have a little bit of a punch. I'm not sure how much you'll see it depending on image to image. Let me darken this up a little bit more because you can't really see it there. But yeah, so it just adds that nice little punch, nice bit of sharpening to it, bit of grain, and just kind of, yeah, polishes your images a little bit after you've exported them. Okay guys, so hopefully that all recorded okay, and hopefully you got something out of that video. If you did, please let me know, press like, press subscribe, let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos like this as opposed to me just talking to the camera. And yeah, well, thank you so much for watching guys, and I will see you in the next one.